Twin here, and welcome to the Coach's Journey podcast. In this episode, I'm joined by the wonderful Ashana Crichton. Being made redundant 18 months after moving to America transformed Ashana's life because, in her own words, when you take away that security blanket, you have to leap into something new. In this episode of the Coach's Journey podcast, Ashana recalls having that rug pulled from under her feet because it set her on the path to becoming a certified master executive coach, the founder of ARC Growth, which cultivates spaces of shared belonging for influential leaders and underrepresented mid-career professionals. Now living and working in her native London after 5 years in the US, Shana talks about the different receptions she experienced as a coach, both in the US and London. And she challenges the stigma around the term life coaching, which she sees as a barrier to inclusivity and accessibility when it comes to our work as coaches. Shana also shares her reflections and experiences as part of the groundbreaking work with the Diverse Executive Coaches Network. Today, Shana delivers coaching and consultancy to businesses wishing to progress diversity, equity and inclusion. And she offers really eye-opening insights on the way biases and power imbalances can impact coaching relationships, as well as some really great practical guidance on how to address those imbalances and biases. For me, this episode was a real reminder for the power of working in true partnership with our clients as coaches. Ashana illuminates the potential for knowledge, experience, and inspiration that can be shared when we create the conditions for coaching's unique value exchange. As well as all of this episode features so much. Some of the things that stood out for me that I found really insightful were talking about how to allow the time for context to emerge before asking questions that could otherwise be overwhelming for clients in those coaching conversations. What to do with some of the unexpected responses we might get while coaching clients. The benefits of doing lots of things and not expecting anything from them, and also how to build a coaching business through and from doing what we really love. And towards the end of this episode, Ashana also shares some of the tools, skills, and approaches she uses to continually further her personal, professional development and expand her already broad horizons. I think at the end of the episode, I say something like it being an absolute blast speaking with Ashana, and it really was. I really hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. So without further ado, delighted to introduce Ashana Crichton on the Coach's Journey podcast. Ashana Crichton, welcome to the Coach's Journey podcast.
Thanks, Alex. Nice to be here.
Great to have you. And how are you today, Ashana?
I am good. I'm a bit full of cold, but which I can hear in my own voice. But other than that, I'm good. I've done a bit of exercise. I've ate well. I've spoken to nice people. So it's a good day.
Well, hopefully that will continue today.
Yeah, hopefully this isn't the end of that, Alex. That's
yeah. Setting myself up there. Well, maybe to warm up before we dive into the coaching stuff, kind of a question we sometimes do as podcast hosts in our team meetings is, what's inspired you recently? So what's inspired you recently, Ashana?
Inspired me recently. Last week was a good one. Last week I do some work voluntarily for the Association for Coaching, and we had a co-coaching session, which is where coaches get to come online. It's a member benefit, but essentially you get to practice a bit of coaching, and you work in triads. And about 3 days before, the admin team emailed us and said, so we've got 100 people dialing on to the call. I was like, oh my goodness. So myself and one of my peers, we facilitate it. And I think that was really inspirational because, for two reasons. One, because it was 100 coaches that were there to practice their coaching and just to get better for getting better sake. And I think that was awesome. And then the other thing was that it was a co-coaching session specifically for leader coaches. So people that have day jobs, are leaders or managers or anything within an organization, and but also want to use coaching skills within that. And so the fact that there are so many people using coaching skills within organizations is also incredibly inspiring as well. So that was a good one. Yeah.
That is a good one. Funny as well, because the conversation I had before this was another AC member promoting co-coaching forums. So really need to check them out then. Yeah, and leader coaching is definitely something I imagine we'll come back to, Ashana. But yeah, also quite nice to get a little glimpse into your coaching world now. But yeah, if we start at the beginning, where did you first come across coaching, Ashana?
So I think it's fair to say that I probably used the words coaching and mentorship interchangeably for a long while. So I came across coaching because I was actually in my previous career, which was advertising, and I ran a mentoring program for women in the industry. So it can be a bit of a tough industry sometimes to navigate, and so it would be for senior women in the industry to really mentor people that were maybe in their 1 to 3 year space. And we did that across agencies and so on and so forth. And it was during that time that I probably sometimes said coaching, sometimes said mentorship. And it was somebody that came in and was a speaker and spoke about different interventions and put coaching separately to mentorship, separately to other things. And at that point, I realized, oh, coaching. And his definition of coaching and just thinking about it being both a partnership, but also being that where the expertise lie, and the expertise lying in the person receiving the coaching rather than in that person that's doing the coaching. And that distinction, I just thought it was the complete opposite to everything I thought it was. I now describe coaching as the opposite to mentorship for that reason. And that was how I came across it. And that's when I just thought, wow, this is a really amazing tool to be able to partner with someone, to be able to hear from them, and to empower somebody to recognize that, all of that lived experience they have, maybe they just need some time and space to be asked the right questions and hear it aloud for themselves so that they can start problem solving and learning that for themselves. So, well, yeah, that was where I first came across coaching.
And it sounds like you caught quite a few bits of it, but do you remember that definition that was that light bulb moment? You mentioned partnership.
Oh, I don't. I'd probably make it up now, but it clearly struck a chord. And I'd say it was just where the knowledge was coming from, probably, that struck that chord. And realizing that people are there for different reasons. And, there's times when it's great to speak to a best friend that's going to tell you what they think is best for you. And sometimes you take that advice and sometimes you're like, yeah, okay, that's very nice for you to have my best intentions at heart, but I'm probably not going to do that. And a mentor as well, it's easy for somebody to say, this is how I walked in the world and this is how you might go about it. But again, it doesn't always fit. It doesn't always feel right to take that advice and to feel that is the only way. And that was often my experience as well, which having great people around me, people that advocated for me, rallied around me, mentors, but it often just didn't feel like how I wanted to come at a problem. And so the thought that actually the answer for how I wanted to come at the problem was inside me, if somebody just took the time and space to ask me the questions, felt really, really empowering. Yeah, so it's probably something in that felt meaningful to me.
I really love that. I suppose frame, because I imagine you still get asked this a lot, like what is coaching versus mentoring, but just like that, where the knowledge comes from is such a succinct, beautiful way of putting it. So if that was that first moment of, oh, this really is what coaching is, what happened next, Ashana?
What happened next? Well, was I was moving from the UK to the US, and being transitioned within my work. And during that time, because of visa situations, so on and so forth, I had what was almost a gardening leave one summer of 3 months. And I always said I wanted a gardening leave. I think I've worked my whole career wanting to be placed on gardening leave. And this was my moment. And I had 3 months off in the summer of 2015, where I wasn't allowed to be working for the agency in the UK, and my visa wasn't ready for me to be working with the agency in the US just yet. And so I thought, what do I do with this 3 months gardening leave? And well, I did two things that were probably quite important. One was I did jury duty. And I did jury duty because all of those times that I'd been called up for jury duty and asked for it to be deferred, or it wasn't the right time, or could I get out of it because of work? I was like, I'm going to go and do my civil duty this summer. So when I got called up for jury duty, I went there and I did that for 2 weeks. And then I also thought, oh, let me find out a bit more about this thing I've heard about called coaching that did spark up an interest for me. And I did one of those freebie day courses or something, 2 day courses in London. And I really loved it. I really, really loved it. And so when I went to the US a couple of months later, I thought, right, I'd really like to add this to my professional life and be a coaching leader. And so at that point, then I signed up and did a coaching program, which was a 9 month or so coaching program. But yeah, that was the start of my journey. Kind of stumbled along and fell into it as I do most things.
And when you had said you always wanted gardening leave, was that how you imagined it would be spent when you first dreamt of your gardening leave?
I don't know what I thought I'd do with it. I think that was it. I just couldn't believe that at some point in my life I might be paid for not doing anything. I probably realized quite quickly that I'm not somebody that doesn't do anything well, or doesn't not do anything well. Yeah, and so you sit down for a couple of days, and think week two. Oh, I know what else I did. I learned how to knit that summer, because I think probably week two, I realized, oh, I probably should try and learn a skill. So I learned how to knit. So that was also part of my jury duty, because each day I would turn up with a ball of wool and some knitting needles and have to put them through the security the security before I went in, and they couldn't quite understand whether the knitting needles were going to be some kind of tool, some kind of weapon. And I was always saying, no, 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 I'm just practicing. But yeah, I don't not do, I, I can't even say it now. I don't do not much very well. Make of that what you will, Alex. Um, and so no, I was much more active that summer than I thought I would be. And yeah, that's nice. It's quite nice being in a space where you can be open to learn how to knit, or doing your civic duty, or picking up a skill that you interested you a few months ago, or just, well, I guess it's almost that coaching time and space to work out what's in your mind, so that you can do for yourself and make the life that you want to.
Yeah. And so that was summer 2015, if I'm
Summer
remembering right.
2015. Yeah, feels like it should be a song.
Yeah, well, maybe we can make one at the end. But yeah, we're nearly a decade away from that now. So if we were, yeah, if we jump forward, what do things look like for you now, Ashana?
So it's like a full circle, because in that summer of 2015, I then moved to the US. I transitioned from advertising to coaching. I got married. I stayed there for 5 years. I came back mid-pandemic, and now I'm talking to you. I would say 3/4 of a mile from where I spent my gardening leave, having like moved around the world and back, and ended up back with my American husband in Northwest London, not far from where I started, and probably a mile and a half from where I was born. So it feels like a bit of a full circle, but it does look very different. So I now have a full-time career in coaching, let's call it, or at least I have a portfolio career. I work for myself. Actually, this is such a lovely conversation, Alex. I really appreciate this because it's nice to have these times to reflect, isn't it? Um, I think my life's a bit like gardening leave now. I think I probably decided at that point, why can't you live as if you're on gardening leave? And so my life looks probably more like that summer than my working life before 2015 looks like my working life now. And that's just what it means to work flexibly, what it means to pick up things you're passionate about and give them time and space to breathe. Um, that summer, I had more time to spend with loved ones, and so working flexibly allows you to do that. Um, but yeah, I love what I do. I love what I do, both as a coach, as a consultant, and it really does give me lots of energy.
Mm. Yeah. Feels like a great coaching question, isn't it? If your life was gardening leave, how would you spend it?
Yeah, I feel like I need to do better now, though. I know I'm like it's like what could you do with gardening leave? Yeah, I'm sure there is a what's one step better than gardening leave?
Well, when you find it, please let us know.
I will. I will. I'll be back.
Yeah. And so it sounds like quite a few like big steps quickly after that gardening leave in 2015. See, getting married, moving to the US, but also the transition to coaching.
Mm, yes. They were all yeah, they all happened, I'd say, well, in that 5 year period, between 2015 and 2020. Um, and yeah, they were probably some of the biggest milestones of my life. I mean, when I guess you think about life almost in chapters, and there was definitely a before the US, during the US, and then after life after since coming back. But yes, a lot of the major milestones that I went through were in that 2015 to 2020 period. Um, yeah. What about for you? I feel really, I feel very spoilt with all this attention on me. What about for you, Alex? And what was the question that I loved? Um, well, how did you come across coaching?
Really good question. Well, I wouldn't be doing a good host job if I didn't refer listeners to an episode that I was on, where they can get the full 2 hour segment. And I can't remember the exact number, but we'll put it in the show notes. But I first came across it actually at a similar time. It would have been 2016, like volunteering for a charity, Universify, that used coaching and residentials for young people in the UK. And yeah, all the things you talked about probably resonate with me, sort of that sense of I've also come to understand what makes coaching so sort of special is that sense of partnership and empowerment. And I think that amazing moment when you watch someone realize that it's all coming from them, when they have the time and space to allow that to happen, which again is a bit like gardening leave, I suppose, in some ways, like just the value of slowing down and being curious and following that curiosity.
Yeah. No, it's lovely. And when you so who was it you were coaching at the time, or who was it that was getting the benefits of coaching when you discovered it?
Yeah, so at that time there would be year 10 students, so age 40 in the UK, so age 14, 15. And while it was, I think, framed as academic coaching, they were all doing their GCSEs, and a big part of it was helping them get the grades to access the opportunities that were equal to their potential. It was actually asking them, like, firstly, we've got an hour. What do you want from it? Which I'd have found difficult at 15 with hindsight, but more generally, what do you want from life, or where do you want to be? And I think just when I look back now, and it's something I still do, I just think that, yeah, it's an important question. I wish we asked everyone as early as possible.
Yeah, yeah, but I think isn't that sorry, first of all, like that's really lovely. I love hearing how other people came across coaching because it's such a different time, isn't it? You came across it when people were starting out, and I'm always speaking to people with that next stage of like, you found yourself in your first career and now speak to people that are probably more mid-career and trying to get people using more coaching as they think about how they do their work and how they collaborate with others. But I don't know whether if somebody asked me that question of I guess what do you want from life? I mean, well, you asked that question as a young person, and my answer was always I want to be happy. And in doing my coach training, that actually came up a lot for me because it's definitely how I've lived my life in terms of that. Somebody asked, what do you want from life? What do you want to be when you grow up? And you say, I want to be happy. And I realized how much, when you unpack that, how much was in it, which was essentially, I was never really ambitious. I'm from a real kind of working class background. And I think that idea of, as long as you're happy, it doesn't matter what you've got. And I actually think that in many ways, it held me back in saying, I want to be happy, because it just meant that I probably didn't put myself forward for some things I wanted to. I probably didn't speak about myself in such a positive life. I probably didn't go for things that I might have otherwise gone through, or I probably put a bit of a ceiling on my life and expectation just by somebody asking when I was so young and being so caught up in my own identity and experience and what I saw around me. And it's almost like starting a coaching session and saying, what do you want to get out of today? And somebody probably hasn't even unpacked that yet. You maybe need to give time for somebody to settle, to think about what that means for them, what is possible, what the space is. And so I don't know if it's so in answer. Well, I know you just said it's good to ask that question as early as possible. But I also think sometimes we can ask that question too early, or not give people enough context to realize what is possible, so that actually they're answering in some self-made confines.
I think that's a really lovely point. And funny in some ways, because the bit I omit from that experience is in that context. The coaching was towards the end of a week-long residential at a university when students might have left their hometown for the first time. And actually, yeah, often the frame was, well, how have you found this experience? And what have you noticed meeting a load of people from different kind of parts of the country? And to that point, yeah, I think it's a really interesting one, isn't there? Of we can ask those questions, but how can we help someone be like ready to respond to them in a way that feels like authentic as well?
Yeah. Oh, that's really nice. So maybe not day one of the residential. So how do you see life from here?
That would be overwhelming, wouldn't it? Yeah.
But maybe towards the end of the residential. But yeah, I think that's nice.
Yeah, and there's a really interesting thing you mentioned there, Ashana, because it sounds like you've worked with a range of people in your coaching in different contexts. So yeah, what have you noticed in terms of their receptivity to coaching as an experience?
So I started coaching in formally in the US, which I loved. It's like pushing against an open door. It's in the US, people are much happier with the idea of therapy first and foremost, and that you might want a therapist, and we all probably need a therapist. And therefore, coaching isn't there. There isn't this. There isn't this. There's no barriers to coaching in that sense, because people are happy to talk. And also people know the distinction between therapy versus coaching. And so people happily have a therapist and a coach. So it was really empowering for many reasons, starting off in the US, because people were conducive to coaching. They were coachable, if that's what we want to say. And also as a coach, so making that transition from being employed to being self-employed was really easy in the US because culturally it's an environment where people want to, it's a mass generalizations here, but it's that American dream country full of self-starters. Oh, that's you're coaching now. Oh, that's great. Who do you coach? And oh, my friend is someone you should probably speak to. And have you heard of this? But let me connect you. It just felt easy. I'd come home though, like I'd come home twice a year, let's say, and say, people are like, oh, so what are you doing now? Oh, I'm coaching. Oh, what's that then? Okay, let me explain to you what that is. Oh, who needs that? Oh, do you make money doing that? It was just like this. It was, you know, going like it was like an uphill battle just to prove myself that I was in a career that had some kind of credibility, was worthwhile to humanity, and was worth paying money for. So it was really nice to almost build up the self-confidence in the US. And then come back to the UK when I felt a bit more hardened and could do that self-promotion stuff a bit more easily.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and by the sounds of it, no more hardy time to come back than mid-pandemic.
No, exactly. Although, and I'm not sure if I actually answered your question though. I think your answer was about different people, so I didn't mean to make that about myself. But no, about people and experiences being coached. Yeah, I think so. I met you during a session I was running on intersectionality. And I think that's probably come out of my experience of coaching people in different contexts and so on and so forth. And what really springs to mind for me about the US and then moving back to the UK is how people experience their lives and worlds and their identities depending on the different contexts they're in. And so I was really, really aware of how people's identities showed up in the different countries, in the different contexts. What were real barriers for people versus perceived value barriers? Understanding, like, having more systemic understanding of why people came at things in the way they did, what people might need to navigate. And it was just a stark reminder for me, and keeps me in quite a purist space from a coaching point of view, that I cannot be the expert in somebody else's life. I feel that fundamentally because I believe that everyone is so different, and everyone's lived experience will be different, and how that impacts you depends on where you are on any waking day. So it's just a reminder to me all the time that just to be with another human and to ask them questions and rely on them to know their lived experience better than I can. So to actually answer your question, everyone is completely different as to how they respond to coaching and their willingness to be coached, their desire, what they want from coaching, and what the relationship might look like. And that for me is the real beauty in it.
Yeah, it's such a lovely reminder because my head jumped to like 10 or 12 questions like, well, how do you hold all of that complexity? And as you say, well, people are their own experts in their lives. Um, and yeah, I'm curious, Shana, how do you find it then, say, if you're working with a client and they have a similar theme to another, for sakes of example, someone goes, oh, I really want to be more confident, and assume that you've done that with 10 other people. How do you then approach that in the context you're talking about?
Well, I think it's when you said, how do you hold all that? I think that's just it. I don't really hold much. I don't hold much. I hold I hold a few tools. I hold a few questions that or techniques or ways of having a conversation. I hold a bit of knowledge about things such as, let's say, imposter syndrome, because confidence, imposter syndrome, read a bit about imposter syndrome. I know what people might say it's because of. I listen out for things, but actually it's for the person to tell me, what does confidence mean to them? When do they find themselves not being confident? When do they want to be more confident? Where do they think that comes from? How, if they felt more confident, what would they do that was different? I cannot hold any of that stuff. I know some of those questions that might be helpful to explore it, but I don't hold on to it. So it's, and what somebody will often say to me is something that I could not have predicted. So, so yes, I let that be my guiding light.
Isn't there something always magical when you might think that when you go, oh, so what are your thoughts or where do you want to go? And you think that it's going to be this and it's just so different.
Yeah, it's great. It keeps me honest. That for me is supervision. If you what those things that you take to supervision that perhaps leave you with a bit of debris after a session. For me, it's always that when something comes back that I did not expect, did not know, could not have thought of, I can't even make sense of, and leaves me feeling a bit stuck. That's just a reminder for me just to be a coach and not try to have any answers and not try to problem solve for people. So yes, in those moments is when I get that supervision of how to stay firm in with the one hat I choose to wear.
I'm meandering a little bit, Ashana, but you talked about the reception of coaching in the UK versus the US and issue that experience. And yeah, what helped you like continue to be a coach, having kind of had that very open reception in the US versus the UK kind of response?
Well, I'm going to get on my soapbox now, so it's only a matter of time, really.
Dust it off.
So I think what's interesting is when I did my coach training in the US, it was a life coaching course. And I didn't really think anything of it. I wanted to learn how to be a coach. And so the course was a life coaching course. And at the end of module 2, let's say, you decided whether you wanted to use that life coaching within the corporate world, whether you wanted to do it within wellness, and you decide how you wanted to specialize, let's say. And then you come back to the UK, and there's this stigma around life coaching because actually, and I feel people poo-poo life coaching all the time. It's okay to be an executive coach and say, I coach the whole person. But for some reason, if I was therefore to say, so you're a life coach. So I say, oh, no, 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 no. So how can you hold all those things at once? How can you carry a stigma about life coaching? How can you carry the fact that we don't have people's answers and aren't here to solve problems and give our experience, whilst also want to be an executive coach because I've got 25 years in a certain industry? So for me, the thing coming back to the UK with is that, sure, I call myself a professional development coach because I like to work with people in context of their careers. I'm also wildly aware of the fact that how we arrive within a career, what shows up for us is probably a product of the rest of our lives. So I will speak to somebody about whatever is meaningful to them in any given moment that helps them reach the goals, the professional development goals, let's call them, that they want to get to. But I really do think that in the UK, we need to lose the stigma of life coaching. I think we need to lose the stigma of it because what it does is it perpetuates the fact that coaching may not be for everyone, or executive coaching is for a certain fortunate group of people that are worth investing in coaching in professionally. It perpetuates who can therefore be an executive coach or coach certain people because we need to have 25 years experience in a certain industry. It perpetuates that certain people don't get paid as much for coaching as others. And so I think we just need, so I think that I'm really pleased that I learned to coach in the US and I have that experience. And I don't carry that stigma because, you know, and I've had somebody say to me, life coach makes me think of charlatans that don't have professional qualifications. Why not? Why does it make you think that? It's just a stigma that keeps coaching for a certain group of people, keeps coaches looking like a certain group of people, removes access to coaching and coaching as a profession. And so, yeah, see, I really do think we need to open it up. We need to kind of take the cork out of that one and recognize the fact that coaching the whole of the person means, sorry to say it, but we're all life coaches at the end of the day. We're all humanity coaches, world coaches, earth coaches, call it what we want. But to say we're executive coaches, you can't, yeah, you're layering on lots of things that, to me, are not true to why we choose to be coaches and the special nature of this as an intervention.
Really, really beautiful. I'm obviously biased, but a lot resonates, Shana. I'm curious then, how did you bring that to the UK? Five years later, you're still working as a coach in your career. So yeah, something's obviously gone well despite this problem we have in the UK. So yeah, what helped?
I don't know. I what do you mean, Alex? To explain the question a little bit more, if you
Yeah,
don't mind.
good question. So that challenge that you talk about, which is still an ongoing one, how did you meet it? Over like returning to the UK, um, having experienced the reception you had for coaching in the US. How did you navigate that? And I suppose my assumption is we're here today, coaching still part of what you do, and in some way thrive as a coach.
So I think we talk about who we are is how we coach, and who we are for me is also why we coach and why we do anything. Um, and so that part of my lived experience is a filter to everything I do. So, you may therefore say it's completely contradictory that I also teach executive coaching. so so I'm a tutor on a course for executive coaches. But within that, I get the chance to be me and to influence that and ask people, okay, so what does that mean in terms of how you show up? When somebody says, why is this an executive coaching course? I put that back to them. Why is this executive coaching course? Why did you want to come to an executive coaching course? Bearing in mind all we've just learned, what does that mean to you? It's an opportunity to question it and not just to take things at face value. My whole rant about the exclusivity of coaching and increasing the access to that is why I take on different projects. So whether it's a project that whereby I coach for free because actually it's giving access to coaching to people that might not otherwise receive it, that's where I do that piece. The fact that I also I'm on the diverse executive coaching directory because I don't feel like any organization should ever have any excuse for not having or for having a homogenous panel of coaches and say, oh, we couldn't find diverse coaches. It's very easy to find diverse coaches if you just look on diverse executive coaching directory. So, and yes, so I don't think I'm trying to, I don't, how do I meet it? How do I meet the different reception in here versus in the US? Is just by asking questions, being curious, being in the places where I think you need to be in order to open up coaching and make it more accessible.
And we'll put a link to the diverse executive coaching
Oh,
directory on the show notes. So yeah, any organizations looking for that diverse panel of coaches can go straight there. Yeah.
love that. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate it.
Hi everybody, Robbie here. I'm the creator of The Coach's Journey. If you like what you're hearing on this episode, the chances are you'll love An Introduction to the Coaching Business Flywheel. That's a free ebook available at thecoachesjourney.com. It's the most important piece of content I've ever created for coaches, boiling down everything I've learned from this show, from working with master coaches, and from my own experience into one simple model. The model not only tells you the only things you have to do to have a sustainable coaching business, but also shows you how they can form a virtuous circle that keeps your coaching business growing. It's all free, and you can find it at thecoachesjourney.com. And there's a link in the show notes. Now, back to the show.
Yeah, I'm really curious. And we kind of talked a little bit about these three chapters. Like if we would tie them together a little bit. So what was it that you completed that 9-month qualification? What were the steps that then went, no, this is something I want to transition into?
Oh, this is a good one, Alex. You've asked the right question. Redundancy. Redundancy will be the thing that pulls a rug from out under your feet. So when you're in the US for a year and a half, and then you get made redundant from your paying job, the job that gives you that security, your employment, your visa, and then get told that you've got 28 days to leave the country. That will make you rethink a few things. It was the most, and I think it was the most incredible experience, because what at the time felt like the worst moments of my life, in terms of, if your identity is so wrapped up in your day job, in this thing that you do, and that, I probably did for 12 hours a day. It was all encompassing, all consuming. Your identity is wrapped up in that day job. You've kind of got somewhat of a plan in terms of loving coaching, and maybe that will be your retirement plan. When you're thinking, oh, this is a country I'm finally starting to understand a bit more, and maybe in the next year I'll explore more. And that's all cut off. You really have to think about, okay, what does that mean? And the great thing about it was that when you take away the security blanket, you have to just leap into something new. I didn't have the security of a paying job that was going to fund me while I found some new clients or thought about coaching or built a website. I just had to do all the stuff. So I didn't ever have that period that many coaches have of putting their toe into the water of coaching. I just overnight was like, well, I guess I better be a coach then. Time's come. And yeah, so I did all of the I went to every networking thing I could go to. I went to every CPD event that there was. I built every website piece of admin that I could, waiting for my perfect client to come along. Spoke about the fact that I was making a transition, and I made it so. And so I really, really, I love the fact now that the rug was pulled from under my feet, and I was made to just jump into the life of my choosing. Because actually, if I hadn't of, let's face it, lost my job, I may have still been in a 12-hour-a-day job that I loved. I did love it, although, it had its challenges, many different challenges. But putting one foot in front of the other, getting paid monthly, spending too much on lunches, shoes, and after work drinks, and not really thinking, what do I want to make of my life, and putting more purpose into my life and having more time and space in it to do the things I actually love and to meet people that I really love.
What was it that made you choose coaching?
That was inevitable. So by that stage I'd finished my program. I was using more tools and techniques within my work. I yeah, I had it. It was literally sitting there on my shoulder, and it was the thing I could reach for, and meant that I was in charge of my own destiny, because I could have tried to I could have come back to London. I could have tried to find another job in the US that would have sponsored me. But all of those choices felt like they were relying on the fact that someone else would pick me up, something else would present itself, rather than actually you have a career choice that you love here, that means that you can live the rest of your life perhaps in doing the work you love in the way that you want to do it. You just have to kind of jump into the unknown, be a bit scared, but do it anyway. So, and coaching, as you probably know yourself, as you do your coach training, you're doing so much self-work that you're a bit of a different person by the end of it. So that piece that I never would have thought I'd ever be self-employed. But after all of that coaching that you've had on yourself, you realize that what your values are, what you really want out of your life. And it felt actually quite natural. So, sometimes the universe presents things to you, and you just got to take it up on it.
Yeah, so you jump into this coaching space. You said you go to every networking event, every CPD event you can, and that's that website. So, yeah, like what happened next?
What happened next was that, okay, so the rigmarole of it all was, in that period, I couldn't work in the US. So I was doing all of the background things because I didn't have a permit or a visa to work with. And redundancy fast-tracked a lot of things. And my boyfriend at the time ended up being my fiance and is now my husband. And so after a certain amount of time and marriage, I was able to work in the US. And I remember that day when I had my working visa, and I sat down at my little desk and I thought, oh, I'm allowed to work now. Didn't have a single client. And it was a Monday morning, and I had at the time I had a subscription to the New York Times that I used to get on a Sunday, because basically it was too big for me to read in a day and would keep me busy for the week. So I'd get the New York Times on a Sunday, and it was the Monday morning, and I sat at my little desk and I picked up the New York Times to start reading part of it. And then I had an email come through, and somebody asked if if I could possibly send a proposal through to coach 4 mid-level managers at a certain company. And it was somebody that I had met at a networking event, and I'd built a relationship with her, and we'd done some stuff during the summer in terms on a voluntary basis. And there I was, day one, with my permit to work. I don't know what you call it. And then 4 clients came, and it was like, okay, I guess I'm a coach. I guess I'm a coach that actually gets paid for coaching. And that was the start of something. And so, yes, did that. And then also I was doing some voluntary work actually for Suffolk University. I was in Massachusetts, so in Boston. And I did some voluntary work coaching there, some students. And it just so happened the next week that the teacher there, she had a consultancy, where she did leadership development trainings for women. And she got in touch with me on LinkedIn. She was like, oh my goodness, Ashana, you've been coming into my classroom for the last 3 months, and I've only just looked at your LinkedIn profile and didn't realize that you were a coach. Would you be interested in coming and doing some facilitation for me? Like, sure, let's get at it. So these opportunities presented themselves. I did a lot of work to make them come to the fore, but yeah, everything came when it was supposed to in the end. It just, it did happen. And I still live by that ethos, which is just do a lot of things and don't expect anything from them. But at the same time, if you plant lots of seeds, they just start they do sprout. You just don't know when. And so, that's my business development ethos as well, which is probably how I managed to never have to sit at my desk cold calling or cold emailing. I just decide to be in the world and plant lots of seeds, and when spring comes, something will come to the fore, and slowly it does. So yeah, that's how I live, and that's how I've managed to build a business doing this.
Yeah, it sounds like a really beautiful approach. What, for those like listening, what are all of those, like some of those things you do, some of those seeds you plant, Ashana?
I do everything I love. I don't do things I don't love. And I don't do things I don't love because again, when I was in Boston, somebody gave me the opportunity to write a monthly article for a new magazine that they were putting together. And it was a magazine aimed at professional women. And it was right up my street in terms of where I was focusing on for my coaching. But I'm not a writer. And I would literally sit down and probably had to write, I don't know, 350 words. When I tell you that probably took me 10 hours a month, I would spend the whole month thinking about what was I going to write? How was I going to write it? Would people care what I was going to write? I'd put something on paper, I'd re-edit it, I'd read it out to someone. And doing that thing that was the thing I didn't love, doing that thing that wasn't natural to me, took up way too much energy. So I just do lots of things that I enjoy. And some of those things are things like this, talking to nice people like Alex Whitton. And and when somebody says, oh, do you want to be on my podcast? I'd say I'd love to. When somebody says we're thinking about a workshop I'll get involved in the planning of it, or I might do the facilitation of the workshop. Within the coaching community, I'm always happy to have coffee chats with people that say, oh, just wondering about your experience, because it's nice to meet nice people. I will do some work, as I mentioned before, I do a bit of voluntary work for the Association for Coaching because I believe in their mission, and I've got some hours in the day sometimes to help out. What are the other things I do? I will go to networking events, probably because I like a glass of wine, and it's good to get into London every now and again and remember that I don't just live in a square mile. So I'll go to a networking event. I'll go and run with a few neighbours that live locally, because we run and we talk about the world and things we love and who we are as people. I just do lots of stuff. Oh, I also do some things like I upcycle footstools. And then I take my upcycled footstools and I go to a little market and I sell them. And I'll do different markets and I meet different types of people. I really do love humanity, love the world, and love being out in it. And just by talking to people and talking about the things you love and the things that people love, you find new connections all the time.
And you mentioned energy. I imagine there's a lot more energy that comes from that than writing 350 words. Just being in the world, doing what you love. Exactly that.
Although the one thing I do have is I have a paper diary, because, well, that's just, I'm old school and getting older. But I have a paper diary, and when I kind of fill it out a week ahead of time, I'll go into my electronic diary and put it all into paper form, so that I can see it in front of me. And every Tuesday and every Thursday, I write in my paper diary, look on LinkedIn. And that is my business development. That is what I decide I have to hold myself accountable to, which is just to look on LinkedIn, because personally, I'd rather go and have a run, make a footstool, go to a market. But just remembering to open LinkedIn and see communities and people and messages and things that I might want to comment on, it's just me pulling on a thread, and I let it see where it takes me. But if I knew that every Monday was business development day, I don't think I'd get up on a Monday. So I think I make it work for me.
How have you, like what's been the process of working out what works for you and what you love?
Spending 10 hours on a 350 word article that no one's going to read, that'll make you work out you don't really need to be doing that in your life. And realizing that, or just when you get that message from somebody that invites you into a project, and it was somebody you met a year and a half ago, and you knew at the time when you thought, oh, I like them, it'd be nice if we get a chance to do something together at some point. And it's just nice when you realize they also had that same feeling, and when the right thing does come along, you will work on it together. And I guess it's a very coaching thing, isn't it, about trusting the process. I really do trust the process.
And what's that? So you've got those 4 clients and then this facilitated work. What's the process from there to where we are today, Ashana?
So who we are is how we coach, is why we coach. And so my own self-exploration has been vital to the work I do. So, and here you go, we've been meandering a lot, Alex. So welcome to my world. I'm sorry. I will take full responsibility for the meandering, but I will try and pull it all together for you now. So there I am as a coach, and there I am with somebody that has kindly given me some facilitation work, looking at leadership development programs for women. And I'm in the US and doing work in the professional space to enhance the place in society and opportunities for women. Trump has just become president. There's the Women's March. And there I am in a country, in a city where I've never been more aware of my identity as a Black woman. I grew up in London. I grew up in Northwest London. Got mixed heritage. Friends generally have very mixed upbringing. And there I am in a city doing work for women when I actually felt the weight of being Black more than I ever had in my whole life. So I thought I need to explore that a little bit, because when I left London in 2015, we weren't talking about diversity. We weren't talking about inclusion and equity. It wasn't something that happened within the world of work. Actually, when we think about it, even at the time in 2015, when we thought about the US in relation to diversity and inclusion, our minds would have gone to affirmative action. And we didn't even know why affirmative action or understand the background to affirmative action. And so I thought it was time to educate myself. So I went and did a diversity and inclusion program at Cornell when I was in Massachusetts. And to understand more about this identity piece and have the language for myself. And in doing that coaching work and then having the language for myself, I started recognizing how my own lived experience had been impacted by my identity. So, as I mentioned to you before about wanting to be happy, and that perhaps being a product of many converging parts of my identity, not recognizing that actually there was more for me than just happiness, that I could actually be what I wanted to be, or should be able to be what I want to be, should be able to really have confidence in myself and my ability, but perhaps recognized without even having the language that maybe certain systems were against that. Maybe the world wasn't as open to me as I wanted it to be. So building up this self-awareness, realize that this is really valuable stuff that a lot of people are not talking about. We're not talking about the systemic impact of our identities. We're not talking about our lived experience, and especially in the UK and in London, really saying, for instance, I was in advertising, which was predominantly white. Those in leadership were predominantly males, and, most people were middle class. And there I was as a Black woman of working class, wondering why certain things were a challenge for me, but not having the language. And don't get me wrong, I will repeat again, I had the most wonderful time in advertising and loved the people and loved the experiences. But what was the impact of my work experience, and then leaving and going to the US and working in advertising and realizing that this career that I've been quite successful in, I wasn't having the same success in the US. And all of a sudden I realized, hold on a minute, I'm actually experiencing a lot of pushback here. My identities are being treated very differently to how they were in London. So this is why I'm trying to bring this all together into a nice little packagey bow with a bow on top. Why coaching, love it, everyone needs it. Diversity and inclusion, need to start speaking about it more, need to understand more language, need to recognize the systemic impact of different identities, need to do some work in terms of creating equality through equitable practices. And then recognizing that in the US, coming back to the UK, whereby we're now experiencing mid-pandemic, and not just talking about George Floyd now, but talking about the fact that the pandemic had a different impact on different people depending on their identity and their living situation. And all of a sudden now, we're talking about diversity and inclusion in the UK, where 5 years later, where I left here and we never used those words. So it was really important to me to start being part of those conversations and helping, well, being okay with navigating it. I'm always really happy to be in the messy middle of things, and there's no right or wrong, and being in the grey is okay, and I'm okay to sit in the grey with people. And I realized that was maybe becomes my secret sauce in this, which is that I'm all right with grey, and maybe as we're trying to navigate some of the complexity and some of the language that is often politicized, I can just be present with people and help people make sense of it for themselves in the same way that I've had to make sense of it for myself. So now my work is coaching, my work is teaching coaching, and my work is diversity and inclusion consulting, facilitation, whatever you want to call it, or whatever it is in that moment. That's my portfolio of work. They all complement each other, but they also exist separately because my coaching is quite person-centered. And I think that diversity and inclusion for me is my agenda and work that I want to do. So whilst I contract with people that, that's probably something that matters to me and that may show up in my coaching, and how do they feel about that? There's certain questions that I probably ask because of my diversity and inclusion work. But yes, they operate in different spaces, but sometimes, just sometimes, they can coexist. And that's when I really get a big buzz from my work.
Bring that thank you, Ashana, and bring that to life. What might be like an example of that coexistence?
Yeah. So they're the kind of projects that I'm working on at the moment, that feel really important. So, for example, I've been doing a bit more CPD for coaches by way of diversity and inclusion. So that was how we met, Alex. And it's recognizing that, coaching, I think coaching's been on the back foot when it comes to diversity and inclusion. And I think it's been on the back foot because we often say that we're here to hold a mirror up or create a neutral space or a non-biased or not judgmental. And I think it's okay to say that, everyone says like, oh, we all have biases. We all seem to be okay with that. But what do we therefore need to do in the coaching space to make sure, coming back to why I think coaching is important, because it's a partnership. So as coaches, we need to have more awareness as it relates to diversity and inclusion to see how it might show up within the coaching space and tip the balance of coaching and a real partnership. Because if you feel that you're in some way responsible for someone, if you feel like you want to give them advice, if you feel like you're trying to save somebody, if you have judgment on their lived experience and realities of how they've lived, it shows up. It's not a partnership, and therefore they don't have access to coaching, as we know how impactful it can be. So yes, so my work in terms of CPD for coaches is how I like these different things to coexist. My work building out programs for internal coaching leaders, so people that are doing other day jobs, but they want to incorporate some coaching tools and techniques within those day jobs. I'm building up a program to do that at the moment. Because when leaders, managers use coaching tools and coaching questions, you are actually recognizing and acknowledging the lived experience of the person, the fact that their way of going about something might be different to yours, but has complete validity and they can buy into it. So it is inclusive. So I want more workplaces to be more inclusive. And if we therefore have more coaching cultures, they will by nature be more inclusive. The work I do, so for example, the Association for Coaching, I've just taken on the role of an assessor, being an assessor. So the Coaching Association for Coaching are going to start doing live assessments. And that's amazing because we're all different types of learners. And not everybody can build their coaching portfolio together with all the written assignments and all the practice and evidence. And maybe sometimes you need to do that live with somebody else, and you need to be evaluated in a way that isn't just based on written form. So the Association for Coaching live assessments are going to be a truly inclusive way of getting more coaches into the profession. So that's what I signed up for. So this is how my work kind of coexists and fits together. And I love the fact that there are more opportunities to do that now.
Wow. God. Yeah. You just talking about it gets me excited by all of it, Ashana. And yeah, like a really beautiful reflection actually that like that coaching culture can promote like that inclusivity. I'm thinking like there's another full circle in you saying that the first coaching you were doing was like leaders as coaches. I'd love to hear that kind of coming back in some ways.
Yeah, I think that's true because, well, I think it goes even fuller circle round to the mentorship, because I think we now recognize that whereas perhaps mentorship was the given way of passing on wisdom, I think we probably are moving towards a place now where we recognize that it doesn't always have to be that top-down way of passing on knowledge and experience. And that's definitely the case because at the moment I'm involved in some reverse mentoring programs, which have been really lovely because reverse mentorship really helps. And the programs that I'm working on at the moment are where leaders are signed up to be mentored by somebody within their organization that has a different lived experience to them. And so the mentor is somebody with a protected identity that isn't recognized within the leadership team. And so how do you recognize the barriers to progression within an organization or the opportunities to make sure that that there is fair access for all without that mentoring? So that's reverse mentorship. But so I think we're getting towards a place we understand that actually a value exchange is possible, and that is coaching. And so where the initial program that I was involved in was a mentor program for women within the advertising industry, that's probably pretty archaic now. And actually there would be coaching opportunities for people within the advertising industry. And those coaching opportunities wouldn't necessarily be women coaching women, or, it could be, but we need to make sure the fair exchange is key to this, because as we're dealing with even multi-generational workforces, there is so much knowledge to be shared if we just partner with one another rather than think that somebody's always in the giving mode and somebody else is always going to be in the receiving mode. So yes, I think it is turning full circle, but the end point looks a bit different to the beginning.
I feel like that should be printed on t-shirts, that there's so much knowledge to be shared if we were just in partnership.
Oh, if I had a t-shirt brand, I feel like I'd quote myself every day, Alex. I don't know if they'd sell. But I would love my t-shirt brand.
Maybe some prints on your footstools.
Maybe.
We're nearing the kind of end of our time, Ashana. And one of the things that I think listeners find really valuable is some of the practical insights you've taken from this process of being a coach, creating this career, this permanent life on gardening leave. And I think there were some practical things you've already touched on that I'm certainly taking away, such as do the things you love, as well as look on LinkedIn, for example. But yeah, like if you were to share any kind of practical guidance or guidance that you might wish you'd had starting out, what would that be?
Starting at what point do you think, Alex? Starting out when? We're talking
Excellent
about the
question.
14-year-old on the residential, or are we talking about the
Um, oh, I love it that you've taken it that way. Let's do both. Let's do you starting your practice as a coach, your business as a coach. And yeah, maybe if there's something broader there, then yeah, let's take that as well.
I think that starting out business as a coach, what was the question? I'm sorry. What would I do differently, or what advice would I give myself? Sorry.
Which question would you prefer?
I love it. Two coaches have a conversation. A lot of them there are a lot of questions. There are not a lot of answers. Okay. Okay, what advice would I give myself starting out as a coach? I don't even know how to answer it. What advice would I give myself? I don't know if I would give myself advice because I can't even give myself advice. I think I would just soothe myself. I think I would just allow myself to know that it's going to be all right. Like just there were times when just to have had the comfort of knowing, no, it will actually be all right if you keep doing things you love. So yes, so really, really proud of where I am and happy with where I am 10 years later. And I would just have loved to have known that that would be the end result. So that's probably what I would want for myself. And I think 14-year-old me, probably the advice I would give my 14-year-old me would be just to take up every opportunity for a different experience, because your life and the container you put it in, those walls can be so tight, and every experience opens you up to something new, meeting someone new, recognizing something new exists, and your world can be so much bigger. And then you really realize when somebody asks you something like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I think you could really start reaching for the stars if you know that they're there. So just take opportunities to experience lots of stuff.
Having explored those 10 years of experiences, Ashana, what are the stars you're reaching for now?
Well, I think it's fair. We said that we said I've kind of pretty much ended up a mile from where I started. So I think, and my husband sometimes says to me, it's my favorite thing he says, but sometimes he says, sometimes you've got to dream a little bigger, darling. And I feel like maybe I need to dream a little bigger. And that is that my world is very much my family, my friends, my community. And maybe it's just about having experiences outside of this part of Northwest London that I feel very safe, and seeing what more there is in the world to enjoy, to experience, and just to be aware of.
Before we do draw to a close, is there anything you'd like to kind of add or we haven't touched on that has come up?
I would ask you, Alex, is there anything based on this conversation, where's it taken your mind, or what have you perhaps thought about and not said that we should hear?
I love the question. I love as well, it feels like the tagline for this is how many questions do coaches ask in response to the questions? Um, I think, the things that stand out, which is obviously through my lens, is that importantly what you were saying about like, do the things you love, and also like I suppose trusting that they'll bring you what you want. Which when you say it like that, it's probably obvious because if we do the things we don't love, it's not necessarily it's likely that they'll bring us the things that we do love at the end. Um, and also the way that you frame coaching, which I kind of made a mental note of. I absolutely have to re-listen to this bit of the interview about 3 or 4 times because it was, yeah, really, I think it's not reflected more clearly to me than you did. Like the power of coaching as a partnership, and that how are we as coaches ensuring that we maintain this space as partnership, and catching all the times that we might not and paying attention to those times where it's like, oh, maybe I've got some advice here going, no, that's not partnership. It's just I think in some ways liberating in the same way that you were talking about that like real breadth of experience you've had coaching gives you the chance to just show up and recognize that everyone's the expert in their own lives. Like it's almost scarily simple, and I think so much can often allow us to get in our own way of that. Thinking, well, we need to be of value to this client, blah blah blah, and but recognizing that actually that value is making sure that we stay in partnership, which I realize my on the spot musings more than a question. Yeah. What's from what we've said so far, what stands out to you, Ashana? And maybe a question might come from that.
I think let's double down on that. Let's double down on that because I think that is the most important thing is if I were to leave any other coaches with anything else, it would be just that is coaching is special because it's a special type of partnership with another person. And if we can all pay attention to moments where the balance of power, there is a balance of power in that partnership and seek to redress that so that we're coaching, then that will be a good thing.
And what can coaches pay attention to that might be moments where that partnership shifts into imbalance so they can be mindful?
There's actually some questions about transference that Jay Hay that were produced that I will make sure I send to you, and perhaps that's something alongside the link to the Executive Coach Directory is the questions to check on transference. And if we can add to our reflections, our reflective practice, what turns up in a coaching session that makes us feel, act, or respond in a certain way, and think about what that is and how we make sure that we're keeping our coaching space clean. If that is the intention, if that's what we're trying to do, create a clean, neutral space. This opening up lots of questions around coach neutrality, but we're not going there. Then that will be a good thing. So I will share those questions and perhaps we just all pay attention to that. And
Yeah, thank you, Ashana. Maybe one follow up there. What's you mentioned supervision earlier, and the importance of like the self work we do as coaches, then reflected in our coaching. But there's those reflection questions you touched on. What are the things around your coaching that you do that supports you as a coach?
So I am the work I do with the Association for Coaching, keeping me closer to the community, means that it enhances my practice. I have regular supervision, which I luxuriate in. My poor supervisor. So yes, regular supervision. Reflective practice in terms of I've only recently started journaling. I will admit that it's not something I ever did, and only recently I've realized the value in journaling. And so if you're not a journaler, I would say don't write it off. And what else do I do? Oh, teaching coaching means that I stay abreast of what's happening in the industry, tools, techniques, schools of thought. This year, I put on my CPD that I really want to build up more of a systemic practice. So I want to go off and do some constellations work. I try to stay abreast of all the things that spike my interest and make sure I do them. And hopefully they make me a better, more well-rounded coach and support my practice.
Yeah, I love that point on the journaling, in that it's never too late to try a new practice as well to help our practice as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Drawing things to a close, which I've maybe said 3 times, but got too excited. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to round things off, Ashana?
I'd just say thank you for this time and space, and I've really appreciated your lines of questioning and having this opportunity, and maybe this is the type of thing that somebody will really benefit from in their early coaching practice, just to get another perspective, and new perspectives are always good.
Yeah, well, thank you, Ashana. I've definitely had a blast, and really value your perspectives. Yeah, I'm sure others will. And until next time, thanks very much.
Hi everybody, Robbie here, and just a few quick things to share with you before you go on to the rest of your day. Thanks for getting all the way to the end of this episode. I'm imagining that means you think the work we're doing is important and valuable. We think so too. That's why I want to tell you about a way to support the coach's journey and get coaching from me and be part of an amazing group of coaches. That is, join the Coach's Journey community. It's my flexible, affordable group coaching program for coaches. You pay between £20 and £100 a month and get access to a certain number of group coaching calls each year, plus some one-to-one time with me if you're a full member, and various other benefits too. For example, you get a 20% discount on tickets to the workshop I'm running with Claire Pedrick in Malvern in the UK on the 10th of May, called The Artful Coach and the Soulful Coaching Business. You can check out episode 92 for loads more about that, with both Claire and I diving into it. You'll be able to feel there the energy between us about it, and also that we're both getting to the edge of our understanding about this, and we'll be developing new understanding for that workshop and in that workshop, which should be really exciting. So there are still tickets available, whether you're a member of the community or not. There's a link, should be a link in the show notes here, and definitely is on episode 92, and you get 20% off if you're a member of the community. Plus, of course, if you join the community, you get the chance to be connected to other amazing coaches on their own journeys, and you can join at thecoachesjourney.com/community. You can also become a supporter of the podcast if you want to give financial support to us, but the community isn't right now. Find out more about that in the show notes wherever you're listening. And if neither of those is right for you right now, please click subscribe or follow wherever you're listening to the podcast. That makes us do a little happy dance and helps us continue to keep the show free. Thanks so much to everyone who supported the Coach's Journey over the years, but in particular, thank you to Alex O'Neill, Alex Whitten, Alan Bedding, David Norris, Jessica Jem, Linda Ransom, Lucy Brown, Michael Trugman, and Oscar Gomez for your ongoing support. Thank you too for listening, and we hope to have you back with us on the Coach's Journey podcast sometime soon.